What is going on, everybody? Happy Thursday and welcome in to Fantasy Alarm's NBA DFS Playbook show. We have a wonderful 7-game slate in the association on tap for us tonight. And as you can tell, John Mpemba is not here. He is on a plane to Georgia, I believe, right now. Salute to John. Hopefully, I know it was snowing up north, so hopefully you arrived safely. Filling in for John today, we have a newcomer to the show, a new fresh DFS player with us at Fantasy Alarm this NBA season, Justin Carlucci, very credentialed NBA player, DFS player in general, and we're ecstatic to have you at Fantasy Alarm. Justin, what's going on, man? How's it going?
What's up, Grande? Yeah, it's great to be here. Fantasy Alarm, one of my new homes, and I'm new in town, so whatever kind of initiation there is, feel free to let me have it, chat. But it's great to be here. I've been putting out some playbook stuff. Definitely looking forward to getting a little more integrated in some media stuff here. And the NBA drama and the news never stops. So we've been in the Discord doing the whole nine, and it's just one of those seasons. If you're busy after 7 Eastern, you might as well just play a single entry lineup or not play. I don't know if you jinxed us, but there wasn't a ton of breaking news so far, but a ton of kind of news that broke, in previous days that is going to lead to a lot of decision making tonight.
Yeah, nothing I would say too significant. Maybe the Jakob Poeltl news this morning. He was listed as questionable. Never like to see a player midday downgrade with an illness. That's never a good sign. But other than that, like Brandon Ingram in, Herb Jones in, Ives Messi in. That's it. That's all we've had. But it's the NBA, like you said. Anything is possible. That's what Kevin Garnett told us, at least. I see some names in the chat room, so let's get to that. Coach Chris, top 2 finish, and I won't be second. Love to hear that, Coach Chris. Sasha, always tuning in from Sydney, way down under. What's going on, Sasha? Jeff P, dude, you're not first again. Come on, dude, you got to get back on the wagon here. We're slow to the punch, finishing third here. Doc, what's going on? Spurs pieces. We will get to that point. Justin and I were literally talking about this pre-show about the Spurs pieces, DraftKings versus FanDuel, so we'll definitely get into that. Travis, need a slam dunk. Bless me for Christmas. We will do our absolute best. Albert, always in the chat. What's going on, brother? Jacob Bowers, tilting after lunch. Could not agree more. Tilting after lock is half the fun. We were just having this conversation, Justin. I want to get your take on it. People that go to bed before a slate is over and wake up to see their winnings or losing are fill in the blank.
An adjective in there?
Fill in the blank like that. I feel like they're insane.
I think I wish I had I don't even know what the adjective is, but they probably sleep better than I do.
Yes, that's correct.
Especially with these late night West Coast games. No, I want to see the outcome, but I pay for it in the morning. And, on nights when I can't sleep, I want to take like a melatonin gummy or something. And, timing is everything. That's all I'll say. But God bless those that can go to sleep and just kind of play like result roulette. And,
right.
I'd rather be happy or sad at night and then deal with it in the morning. I'm not a morning person anyway. And when you play tournaments, you lose more than you win. You kind of you win once or two, binks a season, and that's what you play for. So I can't do it. But for those who do, and maybe it's situational, you have kids and the whole nine, maybe you could speak to that, Grande. But I am I want to live and die in the nighttime and see what happens with my teams.
Kids or not, that is exactly my feeling as well. I am staying up until Clippers start at 10:30, I'm staying up till 1:30, and that's just kind of what it is. So a lot of fun on today's slate. Bowers, thank you for that, because it is true. Travis, again, we in the chat. Bowers, Travis. All right. 7 games on the docket. I'll pull up the DraftKings slate. We'll talk DraftKings. If anyone has any FanDuel questions, please ask. We are not shy about answering anything FanDuel related. We are just obviously previewing the DraftKings slate here. A lot of it applies, except I keep saying 7 game because DraftKings. It is 8 games total with the Houston Golden State game on the FanDuel slate. Let me just ask before we dive in position by position officially, Justin. Anything like on the Vegas front that like really stands out? I mean, there's some really like one specific high profile game tonight across the association, but like, is there anything specific that stood out to you when breaking down the slate?
Yeah, I mean, just from a Vegas standpoint, and this is going to circle back to the Spurs. And yes, it intertwines with the Wembanyama news, but the Spurs average, I think it was like 110 points per game this season. And the reason why pretty much every Spur in this rotation is so difficult to exclude from your large field GPP build is, and I hate to kind of like get there, but it's probably like the biggest talking point in the slate. The Spurs have 119 implied team total without their best player. That speaks
Yep.
volume, and you've been doing this a long time. That speaks volumes about the Chicago matchup. Highest pace in the league, terrible defensive rating, which of course gives everyone a bigger headache when there's $3,500 value pieces that are going to get 20 to 30 minutes and multiple ones sub 5K on San Antonio. And yes, that is the stark difference between DraftKings and FanDuel is DraftKings said, screw it. We're not going to do anything to Zach Collins or Charles Bassey. And FanDuel, made it a decision point. And I saw a comment in the chat, Grande, about the Spurs not as important on FanDuel. I mean, I would argue that they're more important because they're going to come in at much lower ownership. You get 3 points per blocks and steals. And, there's so much variance in basketball. When there's a game that's hypothetically going to be played at such a high pace, there's more room for chaos. So, although it's a little scarier and the minutes aren't assured, and we really don't know exactly what that rotation is going to look like because they have like 4 guys that do the same thing, 4 or 5 different wing players. We've seen Keldon Johnson do it. We've seen, Mr. Champagne, as I like to call him, do it. We've seen Jeremy Sokan, fresh off an injury, post a big score and a big usage rate. I can't tell you who's going to be the optimal guy. I think this is such a crazy spot, not only due to the Wembanyama injury, they have a higher than usual implied total without their best player, and it should be played at a frantic pace. And the beautiful thing is, it's one of the tighter spreads on the slate. We have to worry about blowouts in like 3 or 4 other games. And good Lord, if you stack the Houston Minnesota game last night, that would be one night in particular where you could hang it up and go to bed and then deal with it in the morning. But just the fact that we have such an enhanced team total here without a 30% usage rate monster says good luck. Let's try to push the right buttons here. If you're playing one entry, especially on FanDuel, it's going to be difficult because you definitely want a chunk of this game. I don't think it would be good to endorse a full fade of the Spurs side on either side tonight. And I don't know if you have a different take on that, but I think someone, at least one player, most likely at least 2, are going to pop from the Spurs team.
I have no difference in opinions. And I think, based on the ownership, people think it's going to be players at the same position. You just look at the Spurs, Zach Collins, Charles Bassey. Hello. You guys have been the 2 highest rostered players basically all day. So I think that approach is going to be extremely popular on DraftKings. And you're right. Like with the wing room, it's just the Spider-Man meme with all of them.
It is. Yeah.
It's just, that's my way to describe it. Let's get into our positional breakdown here. Appreciate everyone in the chat. Appreciate Doc for bringing that to our attention. We see you, Chris. We see you, Power. Travis, S. Penny. Stay up late to watch James Harden destroy your lineup. Yeah, that was Bones Highland. That's all I got for you there. Let's get into it. At point guard, top of the list, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We'll throw D-Book in here, Scotty Barnes, De'Aaron Fox. That makes up your 9K and up tier. How do you break down those 5 names, Justin?
Yeah, and I think it's so much easier to go get a Luka Doncic on DraftKings because you have that Charles Bassey value and that Zach Collins value. So I'm a little surprised, if Luka comes in, as low as like 10%-ish type of ownership. I don't know what the most recent update is, but I just think he's so much easier to get on DraftKings. And Luka came right back from injury, a lengthy absence, didn't miss a beat, posted a couple monster high usage rates. Kyrie being there doesn't even affect him really. We've seen this season. You're just fighting the blowout there. And if this thing gets out of hand, you might just get 3/4 out of Luka. And, it plays in devil's advocate there, though. That might be all you need. We've seen him drop 60 in 3/4 and not run in the fourth. So, it's rare that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is my least favorite player out of a high-end positional group. I have nothing bad to say about SGA. He's just a machine. He gives you a high floor. He's got a nice matchup. But when push comes to shove and I'm playing tournaments, I want to hope there's a little luck and a little variance that Washington doesn't get slaughtered and I get 35 minutes out of Luka kind of thing. But with the absence of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker obviously is going to project well everywhere at as much cheaper price point. I think at that price and a porous New Orleans defense, who's just been a train wreck this year, I think Booker gives you, per dollar, one of the best floor ceiling combos on this slate. Probably, if you're playing cash games, you're probably looking at Booker, right off the bat and feeling pretty good about like a worst case scenario night from Devin Booker.
I'm not a historical data guy because season to season doesn't matter, but go take a look at Devin Booker versus New Orleans last year. You'll be very happy with what you saw. Herb Jones defense be damned, is what Devin Booker says in that matchup. I too like Devin Booker quite a bit. Are you a narrative guy?
I like my occasional birthday or my, just had a baby narrative, or I don't know. Yeah, I would say you put me on the 50-yard line, give or take, but I'll always entertain it.
Hey, I'm not. So I just wanted to. I'm not. I don't. I don't care. Being in a data driven space, I just SGA going back to Canada. Does that
Yep.
does that rustle the feathers at all, or
no? I still I acknowledge it. It doesn't bump him up the hierarchy here, but also
agreed.
Not only that, but against his Canadian teammate in RJ Barrett, I think is kind of cool. So there might be a little extra juice there, but I would just rather roll the dice and hope we get some good Luka burn here against, just a disaster of a Washington team. It is what it is.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the Wizards lineup, and I'm excited to see what Brogdon's minutes look like after one game of being extended and then hurt immediately following that. So don't expect much from Malcolm Brogdon's minutes tonight. When we drop below $9,000, we have Donovan Mitchell, John Morant, Kyrie Irving, Jalen Brunson, DeJounte Murray, Jamal Murray. Anybody in the 8K tier specifically pique your interest?
I mean, this is just kind of like the large field tournament zone, I feel like, because you're seeing a lot of low ownership come in on these guys. We'll get to Malik Monk shortly, but
we will.
His new role in the starting lineup. De'Aaron Fox is just a guy who just seems to go off when he's not on anyone's radar. Pretty high team total. Memphis playing at the third fastest pace in the league. They are pretty good defensively, but I can't talk you out of any of these guys if this is the zone you want to live in as like a last piece, low owned kind of look. Donovan Mitchell just kind of thrives in these big, you mentioned like marquee games across the association. The guy is just a gamer. I feel like he is one, and getting away from the analytical sense here, I feel like he's one of the guys who kind of dogs it in bad matchups or teams that they should roll over. But when Nikola Jokic comes into town, I kind of think all bets are off here. He's a guy I will have no qualms with, getting a little bit of exposure here. Just, for transparency, I'm playing some low dollar multi-enter stuff, so I will have some Mitchell shares. If you're playing one lineup, maybe you don't want any of these guys, but Donovan Mitchell is a guy who is always intriguing when he's sub 9K in a big game.
I'm a little bit on the other side of. I am playing one lineup, and I am currently my current roster construction has Donovan Mitchell in it. And I think to your point, you look at the two Boston games in particular, 35 and 40 minutes in those games, 34 and 37% usage rate in those two games. Exactly what you just said. He gets up. We saw it in the postseason. Sands, like everybody, it was Donovan and friends all last year to get them past the Magic, even won a game against Boston. It's his team when he is up for these challenges. And I think you're totally right. There is a gamer mentality with Donovan Mitchell, but he also brings it from the usage rate standpoint. If you're telling me that Donovan Mitchell could play upwards of 40 minutes and have a 37% usage rate at night's end, we've seen him score 70 points in a basketball game before. So there is a really high ceiling. And let's not overlook Denver, playing really fast, and they have been horrendous defensively over the last month. And that's coincides with Jokic being back. So I think this is a great spot for Cleveland. And obviously they're a little priced up and it's harder to get them in single entry stuff, but I do find myself getting to Mitchell of this GPP riddled tier because I do agree. That's all that anyone in this tier is.
I think one more is It's not comfortable, but you kind of want to get ahead of the public news and the herd. And I don't know when this will be, but eventually Ja's got to play like 35 minutes. He played 31
Yes.
2 days ago, tied for a season high. This game has a massive 242 total. I feel like I'm saying this game has a high total every day because no one plays freaking defense in the NBA anymore. But 242 is high. There's like a 3-point spread, so it should be competitive. He's been great from a per minute perspective. He's sub 9K. The problem is, when is he going to play like 32, 33, 35 minutes? If this game's close down the wire, two Western Conference teams battling it out, can we get 35 out of Ja? My gut says no. They're probably just still babying him. It's December 5th, although it feels like an eternity as a 76ers fan, by the way. I feel like it's been 10 years wrapped inside of one. But eventually, this guy's going to play like 34 minutes and have 50 DraftKings points at 8,700. We're going to be like, why didn't we just play him? But so he, like you said, Mitchell, Ja, anytime you get these guys sub 10, sub 15%, you got to start scratching your head and be like, can I make this move? And the answer is, yeah, you probably can.
My one concern with Memphis blanket statement is the rotation, right? They're still playing 11 guys every night. It's just so hard to when is that going to stop? Like we heard Steve Kerr tell us yeah, we're not going to play 12 anymore. We haven't heard that from Taylor Jenkins. They're winning, so they're just comfortable playing all these guys. I don't disagree, being ahead of the curve. I just don't know when the curve is going to start curving. So
me either. But I want to be on that curve. I want to be
that's true. That's true. That's true. Power Najee Marshall out. Yeah, we knew that last night. I know DraftKings has had him listed questionable all day, but we heard he was out last night. Coach Chris saying he's going to play the Raptors. We could, Scotty is Scotty. He's been great, but OKC is the top ranked defensive unit in basketball. If Josh Giddey is out, Travis asks, Io Dosunmu, great value. We could just jump down to Io and we can circle back. What do you make of Dosunmu if Josh Giddey is ultimately ruled out?
Absolutely. I mean, per dollar, he'll project as probably one of the top players on the slate. And he's a guy we've seen smash in the past. He's a guy we've seen run out there 40 minutes in a basketball game. They're going to be shorthanded. And I kind of wrote about Talen Horton-Tucker, and I said how Chicago hates him. They just won't play. And you know what? He just chucks. I get it. He's the guy at the park you don't want to play with. But if God forbid he walks into 25 minutes, he could go for 6x value at his price tag. But I much think they'd rather have a guy like Ayo on the court who they feel more comfortable with, handling the ball and things like that. So, yeah, the Josh Giddey news is very important because obviously we're missing Kobe White as well, and Lonzo Ball not in the cards tonight either. So, yeah, I'm with you. That's huge news. And 8 o'clock game, it might be the classic 7:01. Here's your update for the next hour that we get. I'm with you. Ayo's a great play if Giddey's out.
That feels likely. The 7:01 news seems likely. Shout out to my Bulls for being forever mediocre. Anyone else mid-tier point guard that intrigues you? Giddey is obviously appealing. No Lonzo, no Kobe White, but we just don't know if he's going to play. You mentioned you had name dropped Malik Monk specifically. Do we like the new role? Because the new role looks pretty good for Malik Monk right now.
It's strange. It's not what I expected. I wrote him up in the playbook. I didn't list him as a core play. Maybe I did as a tournament play. But finally starting in the NBA, good for him. This kid was electric at Kentucky. We've seen him have moments. And you look at the starting lineup and you're like, well, he's got to share the ball with Sabonis, DeRozan now, De'Aaron Fox, Keegan Murray likes to get his. His usage rate has not been great over the last week, but I looked at his assist numbers and I said, how is this guy still getting there? He's averaged, over the last 4 games, about 14.8 potential assists per game, which is 6 more higher than his season average. So Malik Monk, who we're usually banking on as being a complete bucket in that second unit, has totally shifted gears. I'm wondering if he has a game where he's also passing the ball, but is asked to take on a couple of more shots due to someone else not playing well or foul trouble. And if he does, I think he does have 50-point upside. So I'm really digging Malik Monk for tournament, 6,700 on DK. The game, like I said, 242 total here. I think he's a fantastic tournament option.
Agreed. Totally agree. And it is very interesting what the Kings are doing. They're just playing their starters massive minutes. They cut Keon Ellis completely out of the rotation, and they said, we are just going to simply outscore you guys, and that's what we are going to try to do. Let's see. Do we have news? I just saw Ty Jerome available to play. this evening for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That probably takes us off of someone like Karis LeVert. Like we'll get low 20s minutes, but I think there's a higher ceiling for LeVert without Jerome, because now he will share the ball handling duties with the second unit. Any We kind of zoomed past Chris Paul. Thoughts on Chris Paul?
Yeah, Chris Paul, again, much like Devin Booker, he's going to carry a high ownership. If you're playing cash games, like you have no problem stopping at Chris Paul. Again, pace up spot for just about anybody in the association going up against the Bulls. They don't play defense. Surprisingly, he had one of the bigger usage bumps without Wembanyama on the floor. We haven't really seen Chris Paul in an alpha role in a couple of years, but super cheap tag. If he gives you 32, 35 minutes, the math says he's a high floor play who, can crack 45 DK points in a matchup like this. I would not be surprised at all. So I think you can play Paul in all formats. And again, if you're playing so much chalk for tournaments, you want like at least one low and pivot in your lineup to kind of differentiate yourself. Right? I think he's a fantastic play, and there's a good chance he's good chalk by the end of the night.
Agreed. I think he's too cheap for the ceiling. Wemby, we're replacing a 34% usage rate guy here. So there's a lot to feed the rest of the squad. When we start getting into the value tier, we mentioned Ayo Dosunmu, kind of lukewarm on LeVert. Is there anything else at point guard that is of note to you?
I'm not playing him, maybe a share or two, but this is like my gross potential click of the day is Mitchich burned everybody so bad the other day, and he was like 1,500 cheaper.
Yes, he was.
And listen, this guy is an Olympic basketball player for his country. And I just feel like, and this is narrative-y, probably doesn't make sense, but I feel like he fails as mega chalk. And, I'm not running to play him today. But if he went for 35 DraftKings points, I wouldn't be surprised. He was so bad. Like, he just lost court time, towards the end of the game. And that's going to happen. But if he hits a couple of shots early, listen, I'm not saying, like, I'm not endorsing this guy. I didn't even mention him in the article today. But I wanted to at least give him the 10 seconds of airtime that maybe he deserves.
Not only is he Olympic champion, John and I actually went through his accolades the other day. Like when he originally signed with Oklahoma City, he was like the European Player of the Year. He had been the scoring champion the year prior, like very, very decorated basketball player, professional basketball player that just has been in bad situation after bad situation for himself. In those two games where he was extended, like 16 potential assists in that spot, I don't think it helped him that he had 5 turnovers in 19 minutes. You get benched for that. That is kind of what it is, especially when you are fighting for your life for minutes. He has asked for his release this year already, and like to go back to Europe. So we'll see. But I think I said that on the preview show, like basically exactly what you said. Like no one's going to play Vasilij Micic, and he's going to play 35 minutes and have 40 fans.
And maybe you shouldn't play him. I just had to, I just didn't want to do the show and not bring him up just in case.
Those are just the rules, right? That's just the rule. Like you add mega chalk to the next slate, nobody plays him. And he didn't play because this guy did, KJ Simpson. Again, not like endorsing KJ Simpson necessarily, but if you believe that there was a shift in, what Charlotte's going to do, Simpson's going to play a bulk of the minutes, $3,700. I guess you could do worse.
Or straight garbage time run is possible too if the game gets ugly.
Or straight garbage time. John popping in here, even though he's like doing like more not as important stuff. Like we're way more important than what he's doing. But he is saying hit the like button, and I agree. Hit the like button if you guys would be so kind. It does help us rate better in amongst the YouTube algorithms. If you don't subscribe to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. And if you guys see, there's a scroll in the bottom and a QR code on the screen. We are running Cyber Monday week. It includes the All Pro package. It is $19.98 a month. It's a 50% off sale for all the DFS seasonal and best bet content that we do daily. Justin's NBA DFS playbook is live on Fantasy Alarm with updates up until and past roster lock if necessary. Draft guides and cheat sheets for when the next season. I mean, winter meetings heating up in baseball. Juan Soto, where's he going to go? That's included as well. Projections and tools, and our premium Discord that once we hop off here, we're going to be in talking the slate for the rest of the night. So you can scan the QR code up there. You can visit this the link on the bottom of the screen with the code CM24. It's just $20. Best bang for your buck, maybe around the industry. So please get in now before our Cyber Monday deal dries up. Let's go to shooting guard. We've talked about basically everybody up here. Brandon Miller is probably the first name. I'm not going to include Ingram here. I don't think you're interested, given the we've missed some time and there was like a serious concern about his injury. Maybe I'm wrong, but Brandon Miller, Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, amongst some of the names we haven't talked about. Any of those guys on your radar for tonight?
Yeah, I like going back to Miller. Again, you're worrying about the blowout, but in that sense, if you're kind of hand building or setting some rules, maybe it makes sense to include him, with a Nick correlation. If you like any of the Knicks, and we didn't mention Jalen Brunson, but his usage rate has been consistently much higher the past couple of games than it was a couple of weeks ago. I feel like him and Cat are flip flopping the usage game like week to week. Probably just means we're both kind of getting acclimated to playing with one another. So obviously blowout concerns there. You're right. There's a lot of overlap here. I do think Miller will give you a high floor though, because he's young enough where they're not going to pull him, like at the end of the third. Maybe he gets like one fourth quarter rotation if it's ugly to maybe kind of salvage, a terrible night. I think just for FanDuel purposes, the Fred VanVleet news is huge. We don't know that yet. Of course, this is the Island game. Cool, big headache. You're not going to bed tonight, guys. That's for sure. If you're looking for some pivots, because just to touch on that, you have Mr. Thompson, who's been awesome from a per minute basis. Jalen Green is probably the biggest beneficiary if VanVleet's out. So just to kind of keep that in mind here. And if you're playing a couple of lineups on FanDuel and you're looking to roll the dice in one, you probably get some really generous ownership on possibly some of those Rockets if Fred VanVleet misses. I really don't have an inkling or any insight if he's going to play or not, honestly, at this point. But that's just a thought there. But I'm okay with having a pretty tight pool here at shooting guard. Like you said, there's a lot of overlap. I think Devin Vassell is in the midst of a breakout season. Again, the slight concern there is probably a little bit of a minutes cap still. I mean, maybe he sees 30-ish tonight. I think that's reasonable. But, looking at his numbers, he's averaging almost 18 a game and almost 8 less minutes than he's averaged in the previous 2 seasons. Again, we're pounding the table on the pace of this game and how bad Chicago is defensively. No Victor Wembanyama. Soup 5K. Super cheap. I mean, give me a break here, DraftKings. Asleep at the wheel for once. Even 6K on FanDuel. No problems with that as well. And I think, per dollar, he's probably my one of my top 3 or 4 favorite plays in the slate here.
Agreed. And the interim coach actually said he's getting close to no restrictions at all. And I think that's kind of what we saw 28 minutes, right? Like, I also think maybe it happens today. We see lineup changes because I don't think Devin Vassell is not starting for much longer. And that could start tonight without Wemby, right? You want to get him into your starting lineup and get some juice offensively. I could see Champagny headed to the bench. Sohan was great before the injury. We could see him starting. So I completely agree. I mean, I cover boyed him for the show today. I said, Devin Vassell, come on down. You're our cover boy. 5K is too cheap for the player you are. About 28% usage, right, without Victor Wembanyama. So I know it's a small sample, but that small sample is not going to change, right, without Wemby. So I completely agree. Devin Vassell, 5K stands out like a sore thumb.
Yep.
And I agree, mostly nothing else. I would maybe give some love to LaVine if Josh Giddey were to sit. But like the price is fine. I mean, no Kobe White at that. If there's no Giddey, no Giddey, no White, no Lonzo, no Patrick Williams. So 4 of their top 9 essentially. I think LaVine would obviously benefit from that and benefit from no Wemby beating him at the rim. So that would probably be the only guy that I would circle back to a little bit. Is there any punt value that we could go to? Merrill doesn't look as appealing with Jerome in. Caruso's back, kind of kills the vibes on like Case and Wallace for me. Like any other value here at shooting guard?
Yeah, I don't love any of it, and I think that's okay
Agreed.
on DraftKings because you just have some other smash plays at different positions, and I think you can kind of live in that mid range that we talked about. I think you got to mention Castle we're probably going to mention almost everyone in the Spurs rotation just for everyone, just to buckle up here. But Castle's another super young kid. He's been trending in the right direction. The other side of the coin with the possible minutes cap on Vassell
No.
is that
Yeah.
Castle's probably the beneficiary of receiving some of that extra run here. He's been playing a lot better in the month of November and December here. Finally getting more comfortable, major minutes, no Wemby. Really cheap. I think he's a guy who won't kill your lineup, and I think he has upside to go like 7x his price tag if everything goes perfectly tonight for him.
Yeah, despite how well he's played too. Price reduction from the last time we saw him. So no shortage of value on the Spurs side. Let's
Right.
head to small forward. Let's check. Vassell and Sohan in 100% of my lineups, Coach Chris. I like it. I do. I think whether or not they start, those are probably their not like per dollar, but their best actual basketball players. So um, uh, maybe Chris Paul. You can still say old man Chris Paul is up there too. John, live from the airport bar. Put us on the big screen. Put us on all the TVs. Request a see if they have YouTube on their televisions. They can put us on there. At small forward, Scotty Barnes faces the number one rated defense in basketball. Brandon Ingram, another position, a ton of overlap. Talk to me about some of your we could just blanket statement. Talk to me about some of your favorite small forwards of the day here.
Yeah, we mentioned some of them, and if the Fred VanVleet news works out, Thompson is eligible at
Yep.
small forward. Royce O'Neal is a guy who's probably going to step in, play 29, 30 minutes. Royce O'Neal never really is not an exciting click when he's around 5K. But he should give you a decent floor. Again, a guy who I don't think will slaughter your team, and he can luck box his way into a couple steals and blocks. It's a really cheap tag for anyone getting 29, 30 minutes against terrible defense. So I think he's in play. Mr. Champagne, of course, as I like to call him, another Spur, another one of these, the wing room with the Spurs. He's had some really incredible games for who he is and the strides that he's made over the past year. Go ahead. I don't know if you're pointing to me or
No,
not,
that was
but
I was Spider-Man. I was Spider-Man memeing
oh yeah,
while you were
okay.
doing that. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
I
was
mean,
I was Spider.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you who's going to get the 3 steals in a block because that's what it come down to. Some of these guys are similarly priced. I was looking at FanDuel earlier, but Keldon Johnson, Mr. Champagne. We talked about Jeremy is probably their best actual basketball player on the court. Again, he's recently back from an injury or a little bit of an absence. And what kind of minutes are we going to see there? Keldon Johnson is oddly almost the old regime on the Spurs. If you're like going back to, it's just so strange to say,
Sure.
but we've seen him fill it up. Look how cheap he is. Look at that tag. He's been pretty good in the time he's seen on the court. I mean, if he gets 28, 29 minutes, you're looking at a guy who could score 30 points in this kind of pace. So, listen, if you have the time, it's great to kind of and make a couple of lineups tonight and mix and match these Spurs. One question I have for you, and I think it probably matters what site you're on and what your process is, but like, what's the maximum number of Spurs that you're comfortable with in a given lineup tonight?
I would probably max 4, but I also think there's a situation where I might depending if I'm depending. We're gonna get to the centers because they're obviously cheap. In a situation I'm not playing Jokic and I'm double centering with Bassie Collins and just punting, I think there's a case to have 5.
It, it's crazy, but it's not. It sounds crazy, when you step back. But with the
Yes.
mispricing here, like I have no problems with playing Bassett Collins together on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think they're priced high enough where they almost negatively correlate. Like it just doesn't make sense maybe to play both of them on FanDuel.
Right.
That's a different story. Everyone's a little more expensive. I would kind of maybe stay in like the 3 Spur range on FanDuel, but just the ball has been completely dropped with this game. And what if San Antonio exceeds that 118 point total? I know everybody's
Right.
thinking, why play all these guys? What if they stink? Well, is your glass half full or is it half empty? What if they score 130 against the Bulls, which isn't out of the question? We'll see. But I think that's really good analysis. I think it matters who those Spurs are, right? But those 2 guys, Bassie and Collins, I mean, we're going to see mega ownership, but no problem with playing them together in DraftKings. You're right.
Yeah, because I think that's what really unlocks your max because it just depends. Like if I'm not playing Sohan, Vassell, Chris Paul, Keldon Johnson as my max four. Like I'm going to include one of the centers, and if I want to do both, well, then we're talking five. We gotta talk the punts here because I think there's two. You had mentioned his name before, and you had said the Bulls hate him. I would say that most of the league, that because he has played for Utah, the Lakers, after not trading him for Kyle Lowry a few years ago, decided to kick him to the curb. He has not really found a true home. But if Josh Giddey is ruled out, even if Josh Giddey's not ruled out, we have Talon Horton Tucker 31. And then Matas Bazulis, their first round pick, 3K. Billy Donovan had gone out of his way to say, like, hey, we're going to play this kid after not playing him to begin the year. And he has looked good in stints. Do you have a lean on either of them? And is it contingent on the Giddey news, or do you think they have like independent value?
I think I just need like more context. I think I wouldn't play them in the same lineup. I If we don't have Giddey news, I would not play them in cash games. I think they're both great tournament plays. I do. If Giddey is active, we're splitting hairs here. Anything could happen in 17, 18 minutes at a min price
Right.
tag. But I'm going to favor the guy with the usage rate. And of course, it's Horton Tucker
Yep.
by a nose here. I mean, listen, his last 5 games, we're seeing usage rates 20, 18, 33, 26, 27. And when the guy's in the game, he's going to do his best to do some damage. And, I think they're both in play, even without the Giddey news. The largest of large fields, you're playing 100 teams. You want a couple of shares? I just wouldn't play them in the same lineup together. If Giddey's out, then we're talking, right? 3,100. I think on FanDuel, Horton Tucker is like 4K. So obviously a difference there as well. You have to be really bad with 20 minutes of and having a decent usage rate to fail at 3,100. You have to be abnormally bad. So I think if Giddey's out, you can play this guy and feel much better than you typically would.
I'm very intrigued by what the ownership does if Giddey is ruled in or out, because Talon Horton Tucker is currently the 6th highest owned player of the night. So I am very curious on which direction that goes based on Josh Giddey news. There's a lot of people playing the value. There's a lot of people playing the Spurs value, a lot of people playing the Bulls value. I think it'll be just interesting to see how this plays out, because Matas Bazulis is also getting, he's also getting some ownership. So it'll be interesting to see how that breaks. I think, in my personal opinion, if Giddey sits, I think there's a chance Bazulis is in the starting lineup, because they started Julian Phillips last game with Giddey in. You could go Dosunmu, Levine, Bazulis, Phillips, and Vooch, or THT, right? That's basically what the field is split on.
Yeah.
I feel like.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if
No.
THT comes off the bench for him. He's almost assuredly going to post like a 30% usage rate as the guy in the second unit, and it might be a win for everyone. So if Giddey's out, there are paths where you can play these two guys together. Again, if he's in, probably wouldn't. Boy, didn't expect that ownership number on Mr. Tucker as of right now, but that'll get the juices flowing for sure.
Yeah, and like Giddey is also highly rostered, so that's not a contingent ownership. People are just playing Talon Horton Tucker because they're shorthanded. Talon Horton Tucker in there for a good time, not a long time. Let's head over to power forward. J Dub is top of the list at 8,700. RJ Barrett 82. Evan Mobley, DeMar DeRozan, Triple J, Michael Porter. Anything really stand out to you at the top of the power forward spot, Justin?
Again, a lot of overlap, but I just love Jalen Williams as a basketball player. And anytime he's not mega chalk, I'm interested. And he seems to never kill your team. He's really taken the step, especially without Chet Holmgren. And, of course, maybe you worry a little bit about a blowout. If Podol's out, that might be super concerning. But by some miracle, this game's closer than expected in the second half. We can't sneeze at like 118 implied team total for the Thunder. And
Agreed.
we know the two guys that are going to be doing the damage are SGA and Jalen Williams, which maybe I should rethink my SGA stance a little bit, but positionality matters. And I like point guard a lot more than power forward. And there's a lot of safer kind of mid-range options at point guard. No issues paying this tag for Jalen Williams tonight, knowing the high floor that he gives you. And he really does have a 60-point ceiling, especially in games like tonight.
Yeah, I'm happy to have another J-Dub enthusiast on my side because I feel like we're always battling the Chet. Chet is the second guy, and I'm like, no, guys, look at this man. He is number 2. He has a 7'3" wingspan. He's 6'7". I mean, he's playing center at 6'6". Good for him. I'm kind of in on someone like Evan Mobley tonight. We've seen him extended, we haven't seen him extended a lot. When this man gets extended into the upper 30s, 46, 60, the 38 minutes against Boston, 50 bomb against Boston. I mean, Cleveland has had a lot of blowouts and not a lot of need to extend people. This is one of those games, and I don't think this is like necessarily the best spot for him personally, because Aaron Gordon is back and Aaron Gordon's really good at basketball, especially defensively. But like if we got 38 minutes out of Evan Mobley, would it shock you that if he finished tonight with 55 fantasy points, $7,800?
No, absolutely not. And that's a really good call. Like you said, I mean, it's not like Evan Mobley has a known minutes cap, but he's like their crown jewel. They're going to protect him when they can. And then oftentimes, 6 minutes left in the game, they can. The Cavaliers are really good, and they're typically, having a pretty sizable win margin. So I think that's a really good call. And like you said, Denver's been bad defensively. So Mobley, not only that, he's not even 8K, always a candidate to get a couple of stocks and a couple of blocks. And before you know it, he's at 50, and you're like, how did that happen? Well, I like that call quite a bit. I don't know if he'll be a priority for me, but no, I would not be shocked by any means if he puts up a big number.
With that game in general, it's hard to prioritize Cleveland, I'd say. Just blanket statement.
Yep.
Like Mitchell has a ceiling, Mobley has a ceiling, Garland has a ceiling. None of them are owned today. So in a game with 235 implied points, big pace up spot, Denver 6th in pace. Just worth taking shots in large field stuff for me on Mobley. Going down the power forward list, let's just get to Sohan. 22 minutes, I think, is interesting because the commentary, again, their interim coach, Johnson, is very transparent with the media. And he said Sohan is not on a restriction. None. Now, he only played 22 minutes, so is that coach speak, right? Because he had said that prior to the Phoenix game that there was no limitations. He was playing extremely well predating the thumb injury, and then he played really well in 22 minutes. If you were projecting Jeremy Sohan's minutes tonight, Justin, what would you be comfortable with? Because I think that's probably the main talking point around Sohan, right? He's clearly been taking his game to the next level this year, but he played 22 minutes in his return and didn't start. What are you comfortable with projecting Sohan's minutes at?
I would, after my Andrew Nembhard experience the other night, I don't think I'll ever be comfortable again. I would say I'd be comfortable with 25. I think in a perfect world, he plays almost 30. I think 25 is reasonable. I think he lands in the middle. I think we see 26, 27 out of him. And, that it's an interesting decision, and he's very good at basketball. He's taken a leap. Again, the matchup is elite. So I think he's definitely worth, I don't know if I'm going to go aggressive on my stance with him, depending on what his ownership is. But, what do you got him coming in at, by the way? Do you have any updates?
There's 2 of us. We equal his ownership. 2% for Jeremy Sohan tonight on DraftKings.
I just find that so hard to believe. I'm seeing similar numbers across the industry. So it's not just here at FA, and I would imagine it still comes in a little bit higher, but if you're playing 100 teams, you're playing 20 teams, you can get 10% of this guy and feel pretty good about it. And I think that's the move, to be slightly overweight because of the matchup, because of his upside for minutes, because you're the coach speak. I definitely wouldn't go into this slate with multiple lineups and not have any of them. I think if that ownership is remotely true, he's an awesome tournament play. And it looks like you're shaking your head. It's good to have someone on board with me here.
I mean, he was starting and playing mid 30s minutes. What if after lock he's starting, right? I think why he lost his job because of a finger injury, he was great. So I think he's live to start. I personally, I do. I think he's live to go back into the starting lineup, and that 2x or 2% ownership becomes what at 6K. If you played Dallas, Washington, or Denver, Cleveland, or I mean, he's still going to probably be lower owned because not a lot of people can get to 6K Jeremy Sohan. I think it's a great tournament play. Not like if you think that the coach is telling the truth where there's not a limit, right? If you believe that there's no limit, you said 20, you said mid 20s. I personally projected him higher than that. So I think I projected him a little. I think I projected him, but I'm also the guy that you were talking about being ahead on John Morant. I like to be ahead on guys that should be starting and will be starting. And you see like the minutes, the way that I thought the Suns were going to start Iguodala last game. They did. I'm not like just sitting here tooting my own horn. I'm just saying, like, when you look at how teams are structured and look at Jeremy Sohan, he's too good. He was starting. He was great. He got hurt. There's no way that he's just going to lose his job because of a finger injury. So I think Jeremy Sohan is live to get back to 30 minutes tonight. If you're more comfortable projecting him lower than that's fine. But 2%, I'm definitely willing to take a shot in large field stuff at just $6,000 because that's too cheap, especially sans Victor Wembanyama. Value under Sohan. What do we got? Like what are some of your favorite power forward values, if any? Because there's one that I want to talk about that I don't want to talk about it, but we have to based on some ownership.
No, I go ahead, because I think like my power forward slot is going to be, kind of interchanging between, Spurs value pieces. And I don't know how to pinpoint one single one in multi-entering, but I will try to use more of them at power forward here. So I'm curious, who's the guy you want to bring up?
I don't want to, but we have to. So Anthony Gill, $3,000. And Anthony Gill is not someone that would be on my radar if I didn't see Anthony Gill checking in with 40% rostership tonight. Please talk me off. Tell me I'm not crazy for not wanting to play Anthony Gill at 40% rostership.
I mean, 3K
Am I crazy?
flat.
Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. In this era, or whatever you want to call it, of the NBA, we've seen him play meaningful, fairly meaningful minute. I was going to say meaningful basketball for the Wizards, but there hasn't been any of that. He's played meaningful minutes in fairly insignificant games for the Wizards over the past couple of years at times. So I think he's someone who's familiar with the organization and vice versa, and I think they don't have a problem rolling him out there. But again, at 3K flat, and I feel like people might go elsewhere than play him. I think he's interesting for sure.
40%. 40% of the field right now is getting Anthony Gill. At least that's what I see. And I'm just having a hard time believing that that's not 40% too high. But we'll see if
I don't think let me say, if that's the case, I'll be out on him. I don't know how that will shake out, but I would probably say I would take the under on that. I'm
with you. Yeah. I'll take the under on that as well.
Right. And I was trying to say really nice things about him because he plays 18 minutes. You can make a case for him on this slate, though. But some of just the concrete value of guys under 4K we have, especially with the Spurs, like you don't need to go there.
And more value opening up. Jakob Poeltl has been ruled out for the Toronto Raptors, and it was trending that way with the illness. Grady Dick will play for Toronto. So obviously that is a pretty big talking point with Jakob Poeltl. We're at power forward. There's a lot of different directions Toronto can go. We can just talk about them right now. Do we think there is a chance? And they basically used Chris Boucher as a power forward this year. What do you think Toronto does with Poeltl out? So they have Jamison Battle. I saw this on the injury report earlier, and I just want to make sure that this has stayed true. Jamison Battle is away with the G League team. He showed up on the injury report earlier for Toronto. Jameson. Oh, he's available. So now he's available. So that's changed. So that has definitely changed since the Jakob Poeltl stuff. Okay, so we have Boucher 3,600. There's Jonathan Mobo 3,200, and then old man Bruno Fernando, who has played sparingly as the backup center as well. What do you think Toronto does with their starting center?
I would like it to be Mr. Boucher. I
Same.
I have a history. I have a history with him. I love playing this guy when I can. I'm actually surprised he's still a Raptor. Nick Nurse had like this vendetta against him when he was there and wouldn't
preach, dude. Preach,
him.
Please preach.
I just feel like, but I feel like that's not going to be the case.
No,
I feel like they go Mogbo, and who's had a real volatile range of outcomes this season in plenty of games. So that's interesting. He just doesn't scratch the itch, man. And when he's gotten there a few times, it was with a bunch of stocks. Was that a 6 on the game log? I see a 5 and a 6. What is that?
I think those are fouls.
Oh, well, then maybe it is Boucher season if he's handsy. Then no, I'm hoping it's the more of the veteran presence, and and we've seen him fill it up when he's had the opportunity as well. So definitely will be in the player, even if he comes off the bench. If he doesn't start Boucher, and he comes off the bench, like I'm gonna play him in some large field tournament stuff. He's a guy who, I don't know. Maybe he's in between blowout run and not too. I'm trying to figure out if we can make the case if he sees a little run in garbage time. I'm trying to figure out how much Toronto cares about him. In the past, it has been minimal, but I think there is an outcome where he's playing 6 minutes into the fourth quarter and they're down by 25. I think there is some merit behind that as well. Much more comfortable, obviously. I think we both are more comfortable playing these Spurs value pieces in that matchup, in that game environment, where we probably are guessing that we're going to get a starting big out of that bunch, and the other one will probably play at least 20 to 24 minutes between Bassey and Collins and that kind of thing. I don't know. Unless Boucher starts, I can't see him picking up steam, which I think makes it really intriguing to at least grab a couple of shares if you're putting in like 50 lineups or something like that.
That was you answered my next question. I was going to say starter for Toronto, and we'll just go to center, and let's work backwards here. Okay. Let's go to the value. We'll go to Collins. We'll go to Bassey. Michael chiming in here, one of our FanDuel enthusiasts here. He says Vassell, Bassey, Collins, Sohan are all around the same price-ish on FanDuel. Who would you prioritize?
This is like a blanket statement. You've said that terminology a couple times, but I'm going to play all of them. I'm multi-entering tonight. I don't have to make that decision of just one team. But with let me say this: I'm much more prone to play Collins and Bassey on DraftKings. They're about $2K cheaper. Their minutes might be, I don't want to say capped around 25, but that's probably about right for them. I think, we talked about Mr. Vassell, and I think he's just in the midst of a breakout season. It's a high pace. You've heard some coach speak here. Maybe the minutes restriction is discrete or off the table completely. I think he's the priority because he has a high floor. And like you said, Michael, they're generally all around the same price. High tempo is typically a guard type of game as well. Able to get more touches on the ball, push the pace, more transition threes. I think the first guy you mentioned there in that blurb is the priority on both sites. Although on DraftKings, you're much more prone to pour in those cheap centers as well.
Let's talk those cheap centers. if you're only playing one, let's say you're someone building a single entry lineup or you're playing cash and Jokic is in your lineup, right? Takes both the min salary centers off the table. Are you just simply prioritizing the starter in that case, or do you have a lean on the Collins Bassey debate?
Yeah, the other thing is, like, Collins has been prone to getting in foul trouble as well
He
throughout his
has.
career too. So, like, these minutes projections are going to be volatile based on if either of them are off the court due to foul trouble too as well. Um, I think they want to play Collins more. I think they'd prefer to have him on the floor more, and I feel like he's. I feel like he starts. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I don't have a hard lean. Like, I would project them very similarly, but gun to head, I will play Collins when it comes down between the two.
Yeah, Collins the better usage guy. Bassey's been
Yeah.
slightly better fantasy point per minute guy this year, right? That's like pick your poison if you are not doing the double spend down center, but both are great. Both will be popular. If you're playing one, you hope that you guess right. My assumption, like you said, Collins starts. If we're doing a 48-minute, complete share, I would say Collins 26, Bassey 22 would be my guess at the way if Zach Collins were to stay out of foul trouble, or even if he didn't. There's also the just saying when Vooch is off the floor, there's also the experimentation with small ball, maybe Sohan at the five. So there's a lot of the Spurs just have a lot of guys, right? They have a lot of NBA caliber rotation pieces that they can play. I think one or both of Collins and Bassey make a ton of sense in your DraftKings lineups tonight. Let's go back to the top and we'll rapid fire through the center position, get a lineup built. Thank you for everybody for tuning in tonight. Please, if you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all that stuff. We greatly appreciate you guys tuning in each and every day. Who are some of your favorite non-Spur centers tonight, Justin? Let me just ask, are you prioritizing Nikola Jokic tonight?
Yeah, I think it's a big game. I'm willing. Yeah, I think again, one lineup is tough. I'm thinking on lineups where you're playing Collins and Bassey together. You can spend up and play Luca and just hope
Yep.
that game stays close. And I think that's a perfectly fine plan of attack and things to hope on, because we've seen Luca get there in 3/4 before. But again, this guy is matchup proof. Like, there's rarely anyone you can say that about. Maybe Luca. But I think there's even a gap between Jokic and Luka, and oftentimes the only thing you're worried about with Jokic is a blowout or a God forbid an injury, or he's going to drop at minimum 55 pretty much every game. I know I see a 44 in the game log there, immediately proving me wrong. But 80% of the
We'll
time,
hide that one, and then we'll go to this.
look at
We'll go
it.
to this game log. We'll go to this game
It's
log.
unbelievable. So yeah, I'm prioritizing Jokic for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're totally right. Matchup proof. It just doesn't matter. And the Luka versus Jokic debate. I think tonight, one guy's probably going to approach 40 minutes, and the other one's probably hopefully you get 30 out of, right. So I'm not one to ever really predict blowout. I don't love approaching slates like that. But Dallas has been really good. They're 15-point favorites against a really banged up team. You can decide that for yourself. Other than Jokic, what do we like at center? I mean, I do love Towns. I think the fit has been pretty great. He's been pretty great. For whatever reason, he's not 10K yet. I feel like he should be a 10K player on a nightly basis. He's not. Other than like Jokic, Town, like what is your opinion on center? If there's anything else that we even need to talk about, because there's so much value.
Yeah, and again, this will probably be uncomfortable. Another huge blowout risk, but Joe Val. I mean, Valanciunas is just a usage
Yep.
monster. He's so cheap that he's still getting there and not killing your lineup in less than 20 minutes. He played 18 minutes last game against Cleveland. It was a slaughter, and he posted over 30 DraftKings points. That's not going to kill you at 5,700. If this guy plays 30 minutes, he has an immense ceiling here. Dallas, slow, pretty good defense. But again, a guy who is going to get in there and get his. So if this thing is close for 3/4, I think this guy has a pretty high ceiling at a pretty low projected ownership.
Two
And I know we're not in center, but before we leave, I do want to circle back on Anthony Gill because I've been trying to process that in the back of my eye, and I might be like slowly taking a different stance on that. But keep going, and then maybe we can circle back before we get out of here.
Okay, well we can just mosey our way down because he is also center eligible, so we could just we could just group him in here. Just on the Valanciunas point, I was just a little concerned with the minutes. If you
Yeah.
look at the minutes, not just because of the blowout, he did not play a lot in the first half after playing 31 minutes, and them being shorthanded. That's a little bit concerning. I guess that's why Anthony Gill's getting ownership type stuff. They played a little bit of Rashawn Holmes. They have Marvin Bagley they could dust off. So I was all in on Valanciunas and I was happy with the result, but I was also, wanting more because I was like, why didn't we get into the 20s? And why did he get benched for practically the whole second quarter when there was no foul trouble, there was no anything. He almost had a double-double at the end of one, and we barely got there. So that would be my only concern. The minutes are as volatile as anyone else on the slate night to night. So
Sure.
that would be my only concern with Valanciunas. Is there anything else worth mentioning? I mean, to be fair to Nick Richards, he has been awesome the last two games. I don't think this is necessarily the spot for him. There's obviously Mark Williams going to work his way up in terms of minutes. Ives Messi, if he continues to start, he has been really, really good on a fantasy point per minute. Or does none of that matter because of the value we have on the board?
I think Nick Richards matters a little bit. I wouldn't play him in one lineup, maybe not even 5, honestly.
Right.
But if I had 10 or 20 or 30, listen, he's played. I wrote him up in the playbook actually as a large field tournament play, and that's what he is. We've seen him post big numbers. You're staring at one right in the game log against Philly. Very, very small sample size. He's played 4 games without all the current Hornets when I was sifting through numbers.
LaMelo, Bridges,
The whole
Bam,
parade of guys
yeah.
that are out. He averages like 1.4 fantasy points per minute. Again, super small sample size. Even last year, though, without just LaMelo and Bridges, this is still a guy that averaged 0.9 DK points per minute. So that's no slouch. You factor that out over 30 minutes, you do the math, and he's just fine. But again, maybe he's taking the next step. I don't know. You're worried about a blowout here. He's on the wrong side of a big spread, so you're a little concerned about that. You mentioned Mark Williams kind of creeping up. Maybe he plays 15 minutes this game after playing 9 the other day. On the flip side, though, again, Cat, great play, should be 10K. He's not going to be 10K for his defense. He's atrocious in the paint. He gets slaughtered down there. And Nick Richards could thrive. God forbid this thing is staying close. And listen, I love betting NBA props. I haven't bet a single side this season. I'm done predicting blowouts. And basically for tournaments, I'm just kind of, my glass is half full. I'm going to play that this game is fairly remotely close. And with enough coaches doing some rug pulls and doing funky things, it makes projecting minutes hard enough as it is. Yes. So I think you can play Richards in large field tournaments. A couple shares, nothing crazy. I'm glad you brought him up.
Yeah, over 21 potential rebounds in his last 2 games since coming back from injury. 21 potentials in his last 2. I wrote up his on Sleeper Fantasy today over at fantasyalarm.com. You can get those picks for free. Get over to Fantasy Alarm right now. 9.5 rebounds. I bet the more than 9.5 with 21.5 potentials. And I don't think I would say Williams does not go much past 9. He is too injury prone. I think that's going to be a very, very, very slow ramp. So I too like Richards if that game does ultimately stay competitive. Let's just rapid fire some questions and then we'll get out of here with a lineup build. Hartenstein might have a field day. I agree that could be very well. He has been super great outside of last game, especially we don't know what Toronto's going to do at center. Thoughts on Harrison Barnes? I have forever called Harrison Barnes white bread. White bread is fine. It's going to get the job done. He's like a turkey sandwich with just cheese, not even like mayonnaise. Like he's just kind of boring. I don't know if you have any different takes, but that's what a turkey sandwich on white bread is to me. It's just boring.
I mean, he's one of those sub 5K wings and a high. Listen, weirder things have happened. There's a huge implied team total and a massive pace. White bread goes good with bologna sandwiches. Maybe this is the night that we're all eating bologna sandwiches, and so be it. I'm gonna have a little bit of Harrison Barnes in my pool for sure.
Super late tonight, primate. Any teams? I mean, the Spurs. The Spurs. That's just
Spurs, yeah. DraftKings for sure. And I mean, you can make a case to play 3 on FanDuel. If that game gets crazy, then yeah, maybe 4 works. But the difference in pricing, again, check out the playbook. I highlighted some of the pricing discrepancies there as well. If I could just real quick, back to Anthony Gill. I think.
All right, Anthony Gill. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the Kaishan George news was maybe an underrated piece because he was playing, 20 to 30 minutes for this porous franchise, and that's a big deal. Of course, everyone's favorite Corey Kispert got hurt. Another chalk value play who falls flat in his face every time you play him. So those are some pretty big minutes, right? Of course, the Kuzma thing, like quietly they're missing some bodies, and you highlighted Joe Val, not really playing. We're like slowly creeping up the hill here, right? And listen, I think the biggest thing is there aren't many players on bad teams who might start and also play in blowout run. And I think Anthony Gill is one of those guys who might be a rarity who could start this game and also be playing if they're down by 30 in the fourth quarter under all these circumstances and who he is to this franchise. God, and I don't love it, but I might be changing my narrative here in Anthony Gill, and I think
over under the field. It's gone down since the Toronto news, and we'll quickly get out of here when we talk about that. 35% roughly over or under the field on 35%.
I would go under, but I'm gonna have some of them, and I don't feel great about it, but again, like. We're talking about picking between Toronto centers as well, as like the other cheap options outside of the Spurs value. And I thought that's what was strange. And you said it was a slow day for news. You talk about all these, just concrete Spurs value plays, outside of the Spurs, other than Horton Tucker on DraftKings, you're not going to get him that cheap on FanDuel. The other Bulls kid, you're not going to get him that cheap on FanDuel. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Montes Bazulis.
Yes, Montes. There isn't a lot of like 30 minutes or high usage rate guys outside of that Spurs game. And, God forbid Anthony Gill plays some trash time and does the thing today. So no, I don't want 40%, but I'll have some. So glad we got that out of the way.
Get your lunch pails out for all you Anthony Gill fans out there. Barnes, Ayo, or Vassell Bazulis on FanDuel?
Oh man. It's pending Giddey news for me. If Giddey's in, I'd rather just play Mr. Devin. And I think he just has like 45 point upside tonight in that Bulls game.
Agreed. Favorite FanDuel center?
That's a good one. Let me get over there here because obviously the stark differences we've been talking about is they weren't nearly as generous as DraftKings was in terms of pricing these Spurs. So let me get over there to center. I mean, listen, like I'll play Jokic if I can. Right. Obviously, there's not as much value over there. Towns at 9K is pretty criminal. I know you mentioned him. Again, another guy who is just super high floor, high ceiling. One guy who we didn't mention, and maybe he's like what's a higher end version of white bread? Is there like a bougie version of white bread?
Probably like the Publix 5 grain, like their Italian 5 grain bread. That's probably like the bougie version of it.
I don't want to insult this guy because he's great. He's just so consistently good at a center position that oftentimes has Jokic and Sabonis and Towns or some punt values, and you don't always go there. But we got to talk about Nick Vucevic, especially if no one's going to go there. No Wembanyama tonight. You do an hour show, and sometimes you just have to keep it simple. Vucevic gives you one of the highest floor ceiling combos. I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head if Giddey does sit, but you would just think from a just blanket statement, X's and O's standpoint, that some more of the offense might run through him without some of these Bulls pieces tonight. Vuce rarely will kill you, and he's been playing some low-key pretty good basketball, a name that might be on the trade block in a month or two here as well. So some, if you're talking narratives, maybe there's some substance there, but between showcasing himself, playing some good ball here. Should be a great game environment. I think Vuce per dollar is probably one of my 5 favorite centers on FanDuel.
23% usage, about 1.4 fantasy points per minute without all the guys and that's including Giddey off the floor. So monster numbers. Nikola Vucevic, you are a Golden State Warrior. We'll just run through a couple more, and then we got to get out of here. We'll skip the lineup build tonight. Maybe we'll put together a core here, Justin, for the folks at home. Okay, we'll just do like a quick core. Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, here's one, here's two, here's three. Boom, here's your core. That's if you want to go Spurs and um uh let's see. Watch Toronto start Jonathan Mobo and Chris Boucher both getting ownership now, both around the same rostership, about 20%. So they shot up the ranks. FanDuel question for you. This will be the last one. Is Moody, Anderson, or Waters viable? Or are we only looking at Wiggins, Pod, and Kuminga? Who are you interested? How about this? Who are you interested in on Golden State? No Curry, no Draymond.
Kuminga. Um,
Agreed.
Listen, Steve Kerr is just a nightmare to deal with.
He is.
A guy with so many body parts, so many pulses in that rotation. He's who knows how many he's going to play. I think Kuminga, 29, 30 minutes is fine. I think on FanDuel, he's definitely strongly in the player pool. I also saw Michael mention Sengun. He's not on DraftKings, so we didn't bring him up. If that game stays close, again, a game without Draymond Green, I think. I know I don't have to twist your arm to play some Mr. Sengun, right? I know you've talked about him in Discord quite a bit.
I am a diehard Alperen Şengün fan. Like, I think this guy has all the makings. Were you a Pokemon fan at
Oh,
all?
of course.
Do you ever see the Pokemon where it's Jokic, Sabonis, and Şengün, and they're the evolution of Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard?
That's a good one.
I think that Şengün is the new Charmeleon, and Sabonis is a rung down. He is now Charmander. That's my view. They run that offense through Şengün. I don't think it's a surprise to see the Rockets where they are this year.
They did some funky stuff in the beginning of the year with that rotation, and they got
did.
really cute. But again, if Van Fleet's out, I mean, this could be a huge spot for him. And again, we might not get that news. So, again, good luck, everybody. I know we're crunched for time. Appreciate y'all for having me here.
Yeah, appreciate you for joining, Justin. Where can the folks get you on the X machine if they want to follow you and follow all
the X machine at the J Carlucci? I'm also pretty active in our Discord. So if you ever want to chop it up or stop in and say hi, hit me up. I also play some DFS football and some other things. So definitely my DMs are open if you want to say hi. Feel free.
Appreciate you today, Justin. Great stuff. We'll be back tomorrow. Me and Keith. Keith will make his debut on the live stream tomorrow. But Justin, you'll be on with me tonight on the show, right? We'll be doing the preview show. So I'll look forward to that tonight, tomorrow morning, whenever you're looking for the Friday slate. Big thanks to everyone for tuning in, and we will catch you guys